that's me again, back. Is it working? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I think my story is not that much about also innovations, but it's more about example and also about some values to well, my task probably now is to show the value of non-formal education and the value of volunteering as a youth empowerment tool, because I really see it as a very, very important factor. We have talked a lot about that for labor market you need to have some skills and knowledge and blah blah and all those things we know. But what I have always believed in, and I have many examples who demonstrated that the formal education and the knowledge you gain there is not enough, and you need to gain those additional social skills, life skills and everything else, which you most probably can gain through the non-formal learning process. Which is well known for everybody, that non-formal education is learning by doing, which is nothing new I can say here, but just once again to remind ourselves that so it is. And and to prove the value of this non-formal education, I have one example, one story of one boy I know for many years, which serves for me as an example about how the non-formal education can be good starting point for your labor market and for the growth of your personality. So the story is about the shy boy who did study at the small town school, secondary school, and so he was good at school, but he was really afraid of going out of the classroom, meeting people. I mean, he was actually afraid of people at all. So it's like, and you know, even being good at school might not be enough if you're afraid to talk to people and present yourself and things like that. So at some point he met, it was pretty accidentally that he met some people from local NGO support center, and together with them he did some summer trainings, and he learned about some basics about non-profits and volunteering and things like that. And what he started with is setting up a volunteer club at his small school, which meant finding another peers, finding another youngsters who might be willing to do some jobs and some things, some activities at school. Later on, they started doing some things also outside, not just at school, but also in the local community level, so to say. And so it was, yeah, several projects, and they spent a lot of their free time actually. So it meant, so the school is still there, but it means that you spend all your afternoons and your free time to do several activities as a volunteer. And that was actually learning by doing for many people. And of course, when you graduate from a small school in the countryside, you always, well, this is how it happens, right? You leave your hometown, and this is what happened to him as well. And so he went to a university where, and this is, I think, true for everybody. You come to a new place, you have a new life, and it's again, for a bit shy people, it's always a challenge to find their space in that new place as well. So, but it took like a year when he found new activities in the university and also working for the local. So once you start involved with with one activities, it leads to another one, and once you see the value, and he saw the value of the volunteering he did, so it led him to the student association at the university. It led him later on to the National Association of Student Associations of the universities. So it's like going further and further, which is always new skills, new learnings, new opportunities that that you meet in your life. So it was a challenge, but still. At some point, having demonstrated himself as a interested person, so to say, he got involved with a local NGO, which started, and he was, of course, the volunteer also at that non-profit organization with helping many things and helping to set up and make the strategic purposes of everything, like helping on everything that an NGO would be doing, and. It's and being the part of NGO, it's always a challenge also in Central and Eastern Europe because the incomes are not stable, and if you want to do that regularly, you can't always get it as a paid job, and so it's I think for a young person it's always a challenge to be part of an NGO. So you need to find a good motivation for that. But once you find it, and once you're ready to invest some persevere work on that, you might reach some. You might reach something, and this is what happened. That the NGO has grown, like they have made this NGO growing and faster and faster. They have proved the NGO locally. They have proved the NGO regionally, also nationally, getting involved with several international networks as well, which means learning again more and more. And now he works for that NGO as a permanent job. He gets pretty often new job offers, but he still stays at that NGO because that is a good and self-dependent workplace, which is very important. And what's even more important, the NGO is now a workplace for four persons, not just one volunteer, but for four persons who get salary at the organization, which I think is a good success. And the main message why I'm telling this whole story of this person is that getting forward may take a lot of efforts and a lot of investments from your own time, sometimes financial means and everything else. But if you spend your time and energy on volunteering, learning, adapting, adjusting, and so on, and you get empowered. This is the word I wanted to say here because that's the topic of the session actually. So. Yeah, and some of you might know the person. That's me. But and I think you never have a better examples than yourselves that you can that I can share my personal experiences about, and I really feel happy about the choices I have made in my life, and I have spent a lot of time volunteering, but I feel happy now with my colleagues and with the organization I work for, and I think it's really And that's another message I usually give in the local presentations in Latvia, is that to prove that NGO can be a workplace as well, not just the businesses and not just the state institutions, but also non-profits can be. And yeah, that's my story. But actually my story further on is about one of our programs that we do at the foundation. So I work for the Valmiera Region Community Foundation. Which is the kind of concept that is famous throughout the world, also in Europe. But one of activities we do is internationally recognized as a youth bank, which is, in our country we call it the Lab of Youth Ideas, but the concept is called Youth Bank in globally. And the picture of our youth bank team, just to have some impression. But what the Lab of Youth Ideas, just to give you some impression about what it means, I have to explain the cycle of the youth bank. Well, I will call it youth bank because that's the way to use it easier in English language. So youth bank is not a separate NGO, it's part of our foundation, which means that there's a youth team working under the mentoring of our staff, so to say. So the first step, of course, always is that you do the recruitment, and it's and this cycle that you see on a slide is it's a yearly annual cycle, so to say, which usually goes along with a school year. It starts with September, October, when we look for new youngsters coming in, joining the youth bank team. What we do next is we do trainings for them, and we are still. And I have to say that I'm not really now proposing that this is the best practice to do, and I'm not proposing that we are the best at doing this. We are still learning to do it ourselves, but I see it as a good example. So we are still struggling about trainings, whether it's weekly trainings or it's intensive trainings for several days, and it really depends on how. But it's important that during those trainings we go through all important topics to be part of Youth Bank. So you have to know what is NGO, you have to know what is volunteering, you have to know what is civil society and how it's built, and you have to understand those values. You have to understand what means giving and philanthropy. We learn what does it mean to get donations, which means so we learn to do fundraising. And we learn project management, and we learn activity and event management. So we go through actually really diverse topics, and it takes a long time, and we always try to make sure that we do it simultaneously, learning and doing at the same time. So while we have some trainings on the topics, parallelly they start doing also their own activities. Basically, their job during the school year is to raise money for grant competition, and they give the money they raise, they give it out as grants to another NGOs, another youth organizations. So, sorry? Yeah. So they have two hard jobs. They have hard job to get money, and then they have hard job to say goodbye to money. And their job is also to give this money away in a responsible, effective way. So they do some fundraising activities, and I will give you some examples of how they do it. And then usually in the springtime, they prepare their project call, the grant call. So they do their own priorities, deadlines. They do their own promotion materials and promoting promotion channels and so on. So it's their own responsibility to decide how we want to spend the money. The only rule from our foundation is that you give this money away to other NGOs. But you decide whether you give it to youth projects, environmental projects, in the town or in the countryside, whatever. And whether it's one project for 1,000 euros or it's 10 projects, 100 euros each. So it's really up to themselves. And also it depends on how much money they have raised, which is of course challenge always. So when they have given the grants, when they have decided, they have set up their own the selection committee, and they have decided who gets grants. They follow how those grants are spent. So they also serve as mentors for the other NGOs, for those youth groups who received money from us. So what I see the really value of this is that they begin as pupils, so to say, when they join the youth bank. But then during the course of youth bank cycle, they actually become teachers themselves, because to give money away, you have to be able to explain others how to use money and how to apply. Also, this is a training, and which is done by youngsters themselves. So youth bank members do further trainings for other youngsters. The whole process of youth bank, and I think everybody who works with youngsters will know for sure that working with youngsters is always expensive, and it is expensive and long-term investment. From the foundation's perspective, maybe this context is not that the most important, but still I want to say that from the foundation's perspective, we treat this as an investment into future donors. Because youngsters who have gone through the fundraising process, they know when after 10 years some other nonprofit will come to them and suggest some nonprofit project to fund, they will know what the story is about. This is our perspective, but it's also investment into those youngsters, and I think they gain a lot for their entry to labor market, which is the context of this conference. And so some main results or the gainings for youngsters, I try to put some keywords on and some pictures from activities that youngsters have done. So most of activities they do it as a teamwork, which I think everybody will agree is an important. I don't know if that's competency or it's ability, but it is a skill, yeah. So because not everybody is able to work in team, so we try to make sure that they do their activities as a team. They gain a lot of social skills, because doing fundraising means that you have to talk to people. And we don't need to look far away. Another girls you have met, Liene and Egita, and also Gundaga, who's now the coordinator of Youth Bank, they all have gone through this process. They all know how it means that you're looking at this phone, you need to call the donor, and you're looking to this phone for 2 weeks until you finally press the green button to call it, and then suddenly the line is busy, and then it's so good that it's busy. So you go through this process, and then after you have done it, I think that's a great change for youngsters to join the labor market. They have done the fundraising on street, during events, during many various ways how to do that as well. It's also about presentation and argumenting skills. So of course our youth team, they also, being a part of local community, we participate at some local youth events and youth policy forums, and this is the picture from one of those youth policy forums where we try to present how we see a youth philanthropy as an important thing to promote. But actually presentation skills is something you gain at any single activity you do. Whenever you talk to anybody, also when you are doing your job planning in the youth bank team and somebody wants to do something, he also does a presentation to others about what we want to do and why we want to do it. So the presentation skills is a lot. Also, what they do is when they announce the grant call, they deliver presentations to potential applicants. They deliver not just the seminar or the presentation about the applications. They also deliver. They have delivered like simulation games about. So that it's not just explaining the rules of competition, but they also go through the process that they already, youngsters decide some projects that they would like to do. They play a game of a selection committee and getting grants and completing the project within like 2 hours or something like that, which is, I think, a lot. Working with the peers with this of the same age is sometimes even harder than working with different age group, because you understand that your youngsters are evaluating you differently than the adults would. So I think it's not that easy. Of course, it's also building social networks, which is important part of your labor market. I think everybody, many presentations said like 50% of the current employees have found their job through some kind of networks, friends or colleagues, whatever. So this is the mayor of our town and director of our library, and so, but it's also every people you meet. It's the social network. Taking responsibility, I think that's a great learning for them. So at the beginning of the year, they get a job. You need to raise money, at least, let's say 500 euros. That's number one, responsibility. But once you get this money, that's even more responsibility, because you're responsible to spend this money effectively. And you know that you're using locally donated money, so everybody who has given money have a right to follow how you spend the money. So it increases the responsibility, double, triple, and even more. And this is a picture when they do a selection. They visit the applications and they visit youth groups who suggested their projects. So this is how they. This is one of the sports activities which some village wanted to do. They learned how to be customer oriented. They do some markets to raise money. They do some services. One of activities they do to raise money is provide babysitting at the local basketball games for donations, kind of. It's not really babysitting, but kind of, which is one of the ways how they raise money. And one big learning, which is not that much competency, but I think it's more about values again. It's awareness of community you belong to. You have to understand that you are part of something bigger, and that you are part. Well, first of all, that you are part of something. And then I think next step is that you are part of something bigger. I think you understand the part of town and part of globe. I think each of us should understand that. The picture actually is not that much about community, but it's more, so recently, it was just like 2 months ago when our youngsters in our youth bank got their own small building. They furnished it themselves, and so this is their house, which is their own house, and then they have 3 rooms there, and they can manage it themselves. And at the end, the key word I wanted to say is a self-evidence. Oh my gosh, self-confidence, yeah. Self-confidence, that once you go through all those processes and once you learn a lot, you get you get confident for yourself. And once you get self-confident, your doors are open to almost everything. And I think many of our youngsters have already, at least I have seen, and maybe even if youngsters haven't seen that, but those youngsters whom I have seen in our youth bank for the last, let's say, 3-4 years, I see a lot of growth in those persons. I have seen Liana for like 5 years, I think, and she has changed so much. So and I really hope that the youth bank is one of those ways how the non-formal learning can be a tool for youngster to enter labor market, to be stronger for that. Okay, thank you so much for attention, and I'm ready to answer questions.